So for today's project, we're gonna be installing a new walk-in cooler that has 2 evaporators. Sorry about the wind. Stopped by a little while ago and got her recovering. See, we're getting down there on pressures. I actually don't know what kind of refrigerant is in this thing, if it's R12 or R404A or R22. So I'm recovering it into an empty recovery cylinder. Figure out what it is later, I guess. So anyway, coworker Darren's just getting here. We're gonna be using the lift to lift up the equipment, which is over in this corner. All that stuff's down there. We just got to bring the condensing unit up and the evaporators inside. But yeah, it's still going to be recovering for a while, it looks like. Only about 100 psi on this side. I'm just sure a lot of the liquid is staying downstairs. One of the evaporators completely iced up because the motors went bad. That was part of their decision to just replace it. It's just leaking and bad motors and old. So we just checked the height of our lift. The top rail gets about to the same height as the building, so we're gonna have to lift the entire condensing unit all the way up on top of here, which is gonna be a test of our strength. So we're gonna lift it with the platform, put it on top of the van, and then slide it off the van onto the rail.
Yep, you're high enough.
It's just how them rednecks do it. All right.
They're called climbing rails, aren't they?
So, okay, so now, a few things. We don't want to tip over, and we don't want to drop the unit off onto the ground. We should strap it. If dropping the unit on the ground will prevent us from tipping over, then I'd say we should leave it unstrapped, because if we start tipping, we can push this off, hopefully save ourselves. I'd rather buy a new $5,000 unit than fall off on the ground.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
As long as it makes it up. Okay. So, I guess, are we ready to just start sliding her over? Yep. So it looks like the recovery machine pulled it into a good vacuum. -8. So we're just gonna shut that off for a while, see if our pressures rise. But yeah, we got that thing up here. It's a lot smaller than the old one, which we have to take down also. But so I thought that this thing was like completely full ice, but turns out it's so low on refrigerant, it's not even cold in here. Like all the beer is like maybe, I don't know, 55 degrees. It's warm in here, which is really nice for working in here. Makes it a lot more pleasant. So we're just gonna move right ahead. I'm gonna go kill the power to these units, and then we'll get them disconnected, and assuming that that vacuum hasn't come up significantly, we're gonna cut the line sets. I probably wouldn't have let this go so long if I had known there was no ice and stuff in the cooler. But yeah, still at -6, so we're just gonna cut the line set and let the air infiltrate the system. But it's really not that big a deal to have a little bit of air move in, because we're gonna vacuum it all out. Ouch. So we took out the compressor because that'll get rid of a little weight, and we're actually just gonna toss everything off the roof. Toss everything off the roof. That was pretty good. So here's a new solenoid valve, all wet rag. So next we're going to be building the expansion valve assembly. So you can see they ship these different nozzles. They're different size, and it'll tell us which one we need for which refrigerant. So these 2 different kits. One is marked 1 and the other one is marked 3/4. So we need to figure out what refrigerant we're going to use, which, looking at our expansion valves, we can use 402A, 404A, 452A, or 507. And we're going to use 404A because that's the most obvious, most common choice out of those. So we'll be cutting this off. We'll be adding our nozzle right up inside here. Here's a diagram actually of how it's going to look. Nozzle slides in, and then we put that snap ring into the distributor body, and it just like helps meter the refrigerant in addition to the expansion valve. So to figure out which nozzle we need to use, we just look at this chart here. You can see our unit model number right here, which is CEL 0105 0105 right here. For 404A is going to be the L3 quarter. This thing has pressure in it when it's shipped to you, so it's a good idea to let the pressure out by removing this Schrader valve right here. And I typically leave that Schrader out till I'm done with the brazing on everything, including inside the building. And it's good to go kind of slow, because if you go too quickly on this, it'll cave it in enough that it's really hard to get your nozzle in there. And we're gonna have to widen that just a little bit. Typically just use a tool, something like this, and use it to ream that out just a little bit. Alright, there's our nozzle. And the snap rings can be a little tricky to get in there. I'll get it in there like that. So it's just in part way, and then I'll use a chunk of pipe that's the next size down, so 3/8 I think would work in this case, to just push that all the way. Okay, so we got the snap ring shoved in. I'll drop into its groove. That's going to hold that where it needs to be on the distributor. So I changed up the orientation. I like this better, then I can just come straight in and use 190. And we actually forgot to deburr this little guy. Do that really quick. We're going to wet rag this very heavily. And we'll just be very careful to not hit the bulb with any heat. 6% silver braze, because it has better flow characteristics for this situation. Burning your rags, it's alright. Just don't want your valve to get heated, which if I feel I can still touch the valve just fine, so it effectively stops the heat. Got the oil trap brazed in, connected up to our unit and the expansion valve. All good to go. We had to add a little dealio. I'll show you. There you go. Stops any large particles from getting in and blocking up the expansion valve. Just looks like this. Just a little filter. Very fine particles would be stopped by this. And that just goes in here like this. I used the swaging tool to open up this one end. And now we just gotta get a 90-degree bend in here. Okay, so I actually didn't record brazing up top here because we've been really rushing to get it done, because as you can see it's getting dark out. Very pretty sunset. Here's how it looks though. Just used a couple 90s there, and then used a chunk of soft copper, swaged that end open and ran that down here. This piece over here is not bendable because it was not soft copper. But we're gonna open up the valves on this unit. This unit is shipped dry, and it's got either dry nitrogen or dry air in it. It's the next day. I've been working on the system and pulled a vacuum on it, made sure that the vacuum held. There was actually a leak on one of the fittings that I did, so I had to go and rebraze that. But after I got that rebrazed, then the vacuum held. And I put 1 pound into the system and done a double check on all the connections to make sure that there is no leak. And seems like there's no leaks, so that's good. So next up is charging the system and then actually starting it, and then we gotta re-insulate the entire line set because we're gonna just put all new insulation on there. But you can see I also use soap to check these fittings because out here you can't use your digital leak detector, but I checked all the fittings all the way up. So you can see I've let about a pound in. It's fluctuating a bit from the breeze. And we're just gonna keep dumping refrigerant in on the high side until we've got, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 pounds in the system. Then we'll go downstairs, flip on the breaker, and should be able to run the thing. You can see liquid going in. Looks like it's flowing backwards toward the receiver. You can see the electricians were here, got it all wired up, hopefully properly. We're gonna look at that too. They wanted to just leave it as how the system was before, which is all the controls are inside. It's just less hassle because you don't have to run the control voltage wires all up to the roof. How it was before, this thing would just run, and then whenever the solenoid would close, it would pump down, so all the controls were downstairs. And that should be fine, but they do send a defrost timer installed in the unit, so we're gonna look at that and see if it's gonna make sense to just turn off all the defrosts, or if it's gonna be better to like actually take the defrost timer out of the circuit. So here's the control. They give us a like typical installation wiring diagram. Basically, all we're gonna have going on is our power coming in right up top here, and then goes to the compressor and those leads and whatnot. But yeah, they've got a defrost timer in here. I suppose we could just unplug these so that the defrost timer isn't powered and then remove the defrost timer, because none of the controls are actually going through the defrost timer. So all we'd have to do is unplug this and this. Just gonna operate as a pump down system. So whenever this liquid line solenoid down there closes, it's just gonna pump down, and we can just use the old control circuit. That's actually gonna work really well. I thought they had more stuff going through here, but apparently they don't. So I got that removed, sitting here. We could power the thing up, but I think I'm gonna go downstairs and finish insulating the line set in the cooler portion, so that as soon as it comes on, the expansion valves will start working as quickly as they need to, and then we'll insulate the rest of the line set. So you can see I ended up having to mount this expansion bulb on this vertical stretch of pipe before the oil trap. Ideally you would put it a little bit closer to the evaporator, more like right here, but the problem is I had fittings there, so it wouldn't mount fully to the bulb. I mean to the pipe, and it's more important that the pipe has, or the bulb has full contact with the pipe than that it be located in the perfect place. So since we'll have this insulated, we'll have a very low difference in temperature between here and here anyway, so I don't think it's going to be a problem. Secondly, when you mount an expansion bulb on a vertical stretch of pipe, it's important to put it with the outlet on the top. That way the amount of refrigerant that is in there ends up staying in this section. Like this acts more as a reservoir than if you put it the other way, in which case it would all flow toward the expansion head. So that's the situation there. I'm just getting this 7/8 insulation on, and then we're going to put a larger piece of insulation around this and zip tie that heavily. Alright, so now we should be able to charge like based on pressure. Our superheat might be a little messed up, since by insulating the rest of the line we'll have a lower superheat, but this will be fine for now. So we're gonna go fire it up. I want to get it running. Okay, so we got 4 pounds in. Oh, look at that. Apparently 4 pounds is enough to let there be liquid present in the system, so I actually can't even add more right now. The outdoor temp here is 38. Alright, so we're actually gonna just fire this thing up. Dropping on the low side, rising on the high side. see there's not liquid. A little bit of liquid. Have to add slow because we're adding in right here and it's going directly to the compressor. So it actually took less refrigerant than I expected. We're at 9.5 pounds about. And sight glass is running clear, so that means we have enough refrigerant in the receiver to be pulling solid liquid. So we'll probably finish off so that the system has about 10 pounds in it. That way it's got a little bit of flux for when the weather fluctuates. Because the receiver is able to hold a fair amount of refrigerant. Thermostat is 21 based on our pressure coming back. So that's about right, because we want our cooler to be running like 35 to 45 degrees. So 20 degrees onto this would be 41. You want your vapor saturation temperature to be 20 degrees colder than what you want your box temperature to be. So we're gonna go down there and see if it feels cold. I'm guessing it will. It's starting to cool down in here, which is nice. You can see we have a little bit of frost on our lines coming in. So I don't know, we might have to adjust the expansion valve. We'll see. It's pulling nice cold air through here. So we got the whole line insulated all the way back up to the unit. You can see our VSAT is around 17. Still running nice and clear. So we're not going to add any more refrigerant. It should be good to go. Superheat. 18.9 degrees of superheat. So that's pretty much where we want to be. You want like 20 degrees of superheat, which is the measurable amount the refrigerant warms up after it vaporizes. So the liquid refrigerant comes, evaporates at 53 psi, which gives us a vapor saturation temperature of 18.1. And then we minus that off of our measurement, which we take about a foot away from the compressor. That gives us our 18.6 degrees of superheat. So that's where we want to be. It could be a little bit less, but with it being cold and with this line insulated so well, it's probably why we're seeing it quite that low. But we wouldn't want it to be really high. So I'm confident that we've got the system charged to where it needs to be. Now I'm going to mark it 404A in a few different spots, and also the system charge. So we got it marked on the door, inside the cabinet, outside right there, which that's definitely going to fade off. And then over on this side, marked it as high as I could because hopefully that'll be shadowed most of the time. Then I also scratched out all of the refrigerant options except for R404A. So hopefully in 20 years when someone comes and looks at this, they won't have to guess what kind of refrigerant it is. They should be able to tell that it's 404A. I also marked both the condenser, or both the evaporator coils, and marked it by the defrost timer. So it's pretty thoroughly marked. So I'm gonna go downstairs and shut off the thermostat so that the solenoid closes. Watch these pressures. You should see this one climb and this one fall. And you should be able to kind of hear the sound of the compressor changing as it pumps down. It has shut down just as we expected. Now we're going to pull the high side line off, and then we'll let that liquid back into the system. Then I'll go down and turn up the thermostat and we'll call her good. So yeah, we just about got this one whooped. Ooh. Just about cut my finger on the edge up here. You can see that. Just took a slice of skin off, but didn't go very deep. Okay, now we'll let this 105 psi into the manifold and back into the system. That'll keep as much waste, well, it'll keep the waste down to a minimum. Over. climb down and we're done. There's a defrost timer. When I turn this back, it'll bring on the system. Looks good. That looks very beautiful. I like it. It's like a really nice cooler. It has a lot of space. And all the reach out doors out there. It's kind of weird because you can like spy on people. You never know who's on the other side of the T. Anyway, I don't know if I showed this earlier or not, but we ended up just heating and bending the original drain pipes over to still hook in, and that worked really good. We had to add those couplings so we could shorten it to get it to line up fine, but it was definitely the simplest way to do it. And then yeah, we had to move those bolts over to hold the evaporators. But yeah, it looks beautiful. So anyway, hope that you enjoyed the video about installing a cooler. If you like this kind of video, I guess comment down below so that I know to make more things like this. Kind of a fun project, and I'm glad that it's up and running. So anyway, hope that you enjoyed, and talk to you later.